Living and breathing La Vida Boa. Welcome to the Boa Life Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Demora, alongside host Nick Colhay. We're here to have conversations that change and shape your life forever. It's like marbles in my mouth. Living and breathing La Vida Boa. Welcome to the Boa Life Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Demora, alongside host Nick Colhay. We're here to have conversations that shape and alter your life for the better.
What's up, everybody? I'm your co-host, Nick Colhay. This is the Boa Life Podcast, episode number 10. You ready to do this, Steve?
Let's go. We are very, very happy to have this special guest, Angelica, here today.
Thank you.
And without further ado, let's just get to it. I mean, we're here to change lives, right? And what's better than having conversations with people that help change lives? What has been your experience in helping people look for that good life?
Well, so I'm a therapist, and I work in a community setting, and I also have my own experience just going through trying to find, the good life myself. So a lot of the conversations that I have with people is they're pursuing their passions, right? They're looking to pursue their passions. They're trying to figure out, like, what is it that can make me happy, but at the same time be successful. And so I'm constantly encouraging people to just like work in this season, like focus on just taking one step at a time. Like, what is it that you're passionate about, and can we break that into smaller goals?
Basically, what we're doing here is we're having conversations where we're trying to help people live better lives. That means, what does that mean, right? It means all kinds of things. Dealing with struggles, getting past obstacles, and trying to find what it is that works for them. We often have discussions with people how today's day and age, it's really hard to live a good life because some people don't even know what it is, right? Because with social media, I'm sure you have a lot of clients and people that have these expectations and they're not real, right? They're not really getting good perspective. So we're here to have these conversations for people to find perspective, hear what is important to other people, and help them work through problems, do all kinds of things to get, to a place in their life where they can be satisfied and they can work hard to achieve goals and all that stuff. And you're constantly doing that. You're basically doing what we're doing. You're having conversations with all kinds of people, no?
Yeah, no, you're right. And, with the pandemic, with everything that happened with the pandemic, it's amazing how many people came to therapy because they weren't feeling like they were content in life. They were really scared, going through a lot of loss and just feeling, I think, like their lives are flipped upside down. So I found that, especially coming out of this year, I'm having a lot of conversations about the meaning of life, right? Like, they don't want to be working full time anymore, doing the kind of jobs that they're doing. They want to pursue something that makes them happy, and they want to feel more satisfied in their life because life is short. And I think coming out of the pandemic, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but when you go through some of these like traumatic events, a lot of my clients, they were saying, like, I'm just not happy. I'm scared. Like, life is short. I want to do more. I want to experience more.
Yeah.
And that to me reminds me of like trying to find the good life, like trying to find more balance in life. So when I think of good life, I think of balance, like all around. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's funny how this pandemic or these events can really exacerbate all kinds of issues. And it's a redundant theme on this podcast. It's like searching for balance, struggling with issues and obstacles and getting past it. And what better way to do that and having conversations? No, Nick? I mean, we've worked through things.
Well, yeah. I mean, it kind of reminds me of why we actually started,
Right.
You have an idea, you want to get it out there, and you feel life is short, so no time like the present.
Right. And getting inspiration from different places and then just going for it. And we're kind of a shared group here where we're all aiming at the same thing. We're trying to help better people's lives, our own lives, and there's nothing like doing that through conversation.
I'm excited at what you guys are doing here because, in the last year, there's been a report of, I think, 264 million people who came out and said they had depression. So these are people who admitted to having depression. And what surprised me, of course, like I always see the numbers, so I think that doesn't surprise me, but what did surprise me is that women are more likely to get help, but men are leading the suicide, like death rates. And they're not getting as much help. They're not putting themselves out there to have meaningful conversations and to figure out how can I be happier, how can I have more balance. And so when I get to see men coming together to have these kind of conversations, it makes me really happy because, I see a lot of men struggling for the first time coming to therapy, like in their 60s, in their 50s, and wishing that they were taught how to have more open conversations when they were younger.
It's funny you say that because, as guys tend to like keep a lot in, and I've shared with, with the viewer that, for a long time I've always liked having conversations and like talking. I tend to be a social person, but I always wanted to do something like this, right? But you were always too scared to do it. And, we touched on this a little bit before we went, on air or whatever you want to call it, about pursuing your passion. It's like, what do you have to lose, right? You just go out, I fear more not taking the opportunity to do something, even though I'm scared to do it. Yeah. And I think it's the same when people are struggling. It's like, what do you have to lose? It's like, talk to someone, listen to someone, get help any way you can. Yeah. And I think we've spoken about if we do this and we just help one person in the audience, then that's the ultimate success. Yeah. So what's success in a podcast? What's success in life? What's a good life? I mean, all these things are subjective, right? But I mean, if we're helping someone in any way, in any form or fashion, I think then we've been successful in our endeavor to do this.
Yeah, I think I speak for both of us when I say at least we're helping ourselves. Yeah. We're making ourselves better in a weird kind of way because we're out here communicating. Yeah. So if we're one of those people who just holds it in and keeps it all, tight, we're not doing that. We're not doing any good for ourselves.
And then having Angelica on and you opening up eyes to like some of this stuff, it's like, wow, it's like,
does it confirm it? Like,
it's like we had this. I mean, I think we had like this. I don't know, it's calling, but like something brought us here to have these conversations, and it's like you're almost reaffirming, like, yeah, all right, well, here's a prime example of like how what we are doing can be helping people. Whether it's, a man, an older man, a young woman.
So let me ask you something. So you guys, you have your own careers. What was your defining moment that made you want to do this? What was it for you that made you decide, I have something to offer, other men or other people?
Yeah, I think we've talked about this, and it's interesting how it all, it's just interesting how it came to be, and you should kind of have an insight into it. It's like Nick undertook this I wouldn't call it a charity challenge, or
it was a challenge.
So
it was a physical challenge that involved raising money. My daughter was born with cystic fibrosis, and I wanted to do something to bring to light her condition out in the public because it was very private beforehand. So I undertook this crazy challenge, running 48 miles over 2 days, and I raised money for the foundation for cystic fibrosis, and then it kind of sparked Steve to give me a phone call.
Miles for Mila, wearing the bands.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it inspired me, right? That inspired me. Like, I hope our conversations inspire people in some way to pursue dreams or challenge themselves to do things they've never done before, or to talk to someone when they have a problem. What do you have to lose? I think his challenge and watching him inspired me to say, you know what, this is something I want to do. It compelled me to reach out to him, and then I think you were like, FOMO, right? Like if he's going to do it, I don't want to see him like on Joe Rogan's podcast one day and be like, I could have been there with him. Yeah. And here we are. So, I mean, to me, like I said, I feel like I've gone through a lot of things in my life, whether it's tragedies, successes, failures, and I feel like I have a voice and I have something that I can offer. Yeah. And for too long, I was afraid for many reasons to speak and to have this kind of forum, whether it was my own insecurities, what will people think. And I got to a point where you have kids, you have this desire to leave this legacy behind. And I had a mother who passed early, and I said, you know what, I might not be here tomorrow. Right. Just like people, life's too short. I want to leave something and leave my mark for my children and for society in general. And what better way than to do this and to share my experiences that I think can help people. And, naysayers, people that want to judge and listen and think, what are these two guys doing on air talking? Like, I'm not worried about those people. And I was for too long in a lot of aspects of my life. So
I think many people hold back because of that.
Yeah.
I mean, before I became a therapist, I didn't think I had anything to offer people. I saw all the things I went through, like the traumatic experiences that I went through in life, as something that was going to hold me back from being able to have a voice, from being able to help anyone. I thought, like many people think on social media, it's like you have to have this perfect life and you have to have it all together to be able to offer anything to the world. And then as I became a therapist, I'm like, that doesn't really make sense, because do I want to talk to someone who knows nothing about life, who has never been through anything? Or do I want to sit down and take advice from somebody who's went through it, came out of it, and then can tell me how to walk myself out of it? And so...
Good way to learn from people.
Learn from the scars of life, the exact opposite. And it holds true to people that are looking at these things and getting this perspective of these unrealistic lives that are just not even real, when, the real things that people should be satisfied with is endeavoring to follow their passions and working hard to achieve them, having some failures, celebrating the successes. I mean, that's the beauty of this. It's like Nick and I can do this, and we could fail and we could be made fun of, and we could, but we are not critics. We're out here in the field, like going for it. So I'll never be embarrassed by that.
Yeah.
And I said it. He inspired me, and I hope we're inspiring others. And having you on and people like you and having different guests and voices and opinions, I think is just an unbelievable opportunity to just be able to go out there and touch. We always talk about how we're all connected in some way. I do believe that. I know you're a person of faith, and I am too. And I believe in the good in all people. I'm not naive to, there being a lot of bad stuff out there, but I do think that more people would do better by themselves if they realize that, we're all in this together. Let's work together and let's try to better all of our lives. The saying that, ships raise with high tides. It's like, I think too many people are too worried about others and their lifestyles and being jealous. Yeah. And I think we've talked about this, but there's infinite stuff out there for us to get. So
and I think you're right. I think having the sense of like, I'm the only one going through it, it just breeds loneliness. And there goes depression, and you feel isolated from people. But when you can sit around and have a conversation about, hey, I've been there, then you realize you're supported by a community of people, because, I recognize your struggles because I've been through struggles, and you've been through pain, I've been through pain. And so now you're no longer alone in it, because I can share that burden with you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why we need to have these kind of conversations, is so that more people feel like, okay, I'm not alone in this. I can get through it, and then they can find a better quality of life. Because isn't that what having a good life is about? Is like not just going through, not just seeing the world through pain, but also seeing like all the blessings that this like life has given you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is perspective. It's like oftentimes we're worried about what we don't have or what's going wrong, instead of really focusing on all the great things we have, our health and the opportunity to do so many different things. And yeah, some of it's just mindset, and being empathetic with others is important, and shared experiences is all important. But again, tools, being able to have professionals like yourself to talk to. Yeah. We're big into, trying to do a lot of physical stuff and pushing yourself.
Training the body to train the mind.
Right. Try to be, healthy in whatever way. I struggle my way, try to be healthy in eating. And I mean, all these things play an important role in your psyche. But I mean, I don't know that there's anything better than the spoken word. So I think like all this, it fills you up so that you can go out there and undertake and do a lot of things. Because I'm a type of person, if I see someone else do it, I'm like, all right, if they can do it, I can do it. If they've been through this and they've overcome it, then I can do it. I think people need to sometimes lose sight of the fact, like you said, you were scared to do it, or, it's like, why do we feel like we can't do something?
Why do we feel like we're not qualified when we have so much life experience to share with others?
Yeah, it's like, oh, why are you doing this? It's like, why am I not?
Yeah. Why didn't I start already?
Of course I'm doing it. It's like, I should be doing it, and you should be doing it. And we, everybody should be, I think, cheerleading one another to you said, pursue their passions.
I think it's important to just let people know that it's important to communicate in general, whether or not you have a microphone in front of you or not.
Very true.
We're human beings. We're meant to be together and talk.
Yes, absolutely.
With your patients, how often do you see, well, let me backtrack a little bit. You gave a very specific number, 264 million people before the pandemic, because obviously that has been life-changing. The past year, people, never experienced anything like that. Before, were numbers different back then?
So to be honest, I don't always look at the numbers, but I can tell you that, the numbers for me as a clinician, like working in a community center, they were lower. And when the pandemic happened, it was just, there were just so many people who've never wanted treatment before who were coming in for treatment. And so my numbers were doubling from the amount of people, and this is, all the therapists that I work with, but we were all seeing double, triple the amount of clients that we would normally see because of just how impactful it's been. Yeah. And a lot of people were lonely. You have a lot of extroverts who are used to going outside and working out and just getting that energy from other people. And now you have a pandemic that's isolating and people are stuck at home, sometimes in abusive relationships, sometimes, men and women haven't spent that much time with their families and now they're stuck at home with their families and they were desperate to get out and so we just saw an increase in depression, an increase in anxiety, an increase in just fear and loneliness, and people are willing to come for help.
Do you think that people actually started to feel different or decided to come out and admit it? You know what I mean? Because
that's a good point.
I don't know. It just that question sparked my mind, and only really someone like you can answer that because I have no idea. Because, what do you think?
I think both.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that people definitely felt differently. I think people were afraid. A lot was being brought out that people weren't dealing with. Because, you can get really busy at work and kind of shove things down. And you
deflect.
We can fill our time with so many different things. But when that's all taken away and it's all stripped away from you and you have to deal with yourself, a lot of people didn't have peace being alone or being just with themselves. And so I could definitely, they felt differently. And then I just think the increase in isolation, it really was hard for people to feel like they didn't have the rights to go out and do things. And it was just a very scary, time.
Very scary.
Yeah, I think that we're creatures of habit.
Yeah.
And we're always trying to use these habits to help us do things. And, when you break that habit, it sometimes leads to some bad stuff. And I think when you're used to doing stuff as a society, and all of a sudden there's a shift, and a seismic shift. And I can't imagine that it didn't exacerbate, the problems that already existed. It's funny. It's like you were talking about people having to be next to each other in confined spaces and stuff, and how that we talked about that in prior talks about how that was actually, a positive thing where you got to spend people that worked a lot but it's really, you get that perspective where for different people, something is completely a completely different experience. It's like all of a sudden, you're right. The wife that's in an abusive relationship is all of a sudden not able to get away if she wants to. It's weird what these things can do.
But the great thing that came out of it is that it provided more access for people because, during the pandemic, they allowed remote services like telehealth services. And I think it allowed people who never considered going to therapy because they didn't want to walk in an office and the stigma around mental health. It allowed them to get therapy from their home, and it's been great in that sense where I've been able to reach people who never would have considered talking to someone and getting help.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. Yeah, it's funny how technology can change things for the better, and I'm sure they like social media can create some positive stuff from a medical standpoint. Yeah, you're right. It's like you have an infinite amount of people to help, and then just like this, it's like, it doesn't stop, right?
Right. How many people can you reach and
Yeah.
support?
Yeah, and then the people feel more comfortable to go out there and access the help that they need is incredible. Do you think that there's a big difference between in person and telemed, or whatever it is they're called?
Yeah, telehealth.
Tele-
Yes. I think it's all based on the person. Like, I love seeing people in person. You
Right.
know, I love their energy. I love having a direct conversation, and teaching skills that sometimes have to be done in person. But for my introverts who are not comfortable coming into the clinic, it works for them. There's people who are lonely for a long time, and having a phone call from a therapist at home without them having to leave, it really made a difference. So I see the pros and cons of both sides.
What do you think is this? Answering the question before I ask it. With like teenagers, men, women, at all ages, what do you think the effect of social media has been on health? Do you think it's been a negative or a positive? And
Gosh, personally negative.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of positive. I'm not going to just smash social media, but just the increase of insecurity. You got kids, they don't know what they want to do. There's so many different perspectives being thrown at them. The constant comparison to other people. And I know we were talking about this before, but just not knowing what to pursue because there's so much coming at them. There's so much information.
Overstimuli.
Being just overstimulated with information. So how do they find themselves in all of that? I don't know if you remember, being in your 20s, it's emotional. You're trying to find who you are. It's such a critical point in your life. And then to have a whole bunch of different opinions just bombarding you all the time, it's really confusing.
I don't know if I could do it these days.
Honestly,
like you mentioned, remembering what it was like. If I had a phone that could do what it can do now, when I felt like that at that age.
What about disconnecting? Imagine being in school and like getting picked on. It's like that's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah,
like you get on the bus, go home, like you could at least get away from it. It's like I can't even imagine what kids are up against with technology. I mean, it's like society's given this unbelievable tool, right? And if it's used appropriately, it's like the sky's the limit. But it could also be a tremendous disadvantage for them. And it goes back to what you said earlier, and a redundancy in our programming is that balance. It's like, it's out there. They're gonna have to deal with it and figure it out.
With the kids these days, I think referring to what you were talking about, you're gonna hear the negative part of it. What they're struggling with and everything with that phone. But rarely are you probably going to hear how the good things that came out of it, because how often do they want to talk about that? If they're going to talk about their problems, that's what you're going to hear.
Right.
Like Cal, like the experience of being able to reach customers in photography and how it's exploded his business, how it's done well from you, from the perspective of being able to help people. It's ironic that a tool that could hurt someone is also the same tool that can bring them back to life, but I mean, it's unbelievable what technology has done for our society, for sure.
I think, what would help the teenagers at this point is you got to surround yourself with people who care about you, who can help guide you, because there's just too much information and you need people to help kind of point you in the right direction. And I remember, like I said, being that age, being lost, not thinking I had anything to offer. And it was a few people that really loved me, cared about me, were like, you're so good at this. And just kind of helped get me back on track. But a lot of these young kids, parents are okay with them being on their phones and their computers, and because it keeps them busy, it keeps them distracted. And some parents, there's some single family homes, they can't be there monitoring and watching all the time.
Cheap, easy babysitter, right?
Yeah. But I'm sure for you guys, the people that surrounded you could have either helped you or hurt you, right? Point you in the right direction or pushed you in the wrong direction. It's so important to have that community around you at all times.
Yeah, we often talk about,
Yeah.
right, what the people around us is exactly who you become, right? It's like, be careful who you choose to be spending your time with. And I think that goes for even adults. You can start making, bad decisions, and if you're running in the wrong circles.
So I encourage, if you're, let's say, a technology person, I'm constantly telling my young people, even older people, and then just be picky about who you're following, because all of that impacts your brain and how you think about yourself and how you view the world. And so if you are going to use the technology, right, and its success, follow people that mean something to you, that are adding value to your life, that are encouraging you, inspiring you, and go unfollow those people that you feel like you need to be like, where you're feeling like you're comparing your life to theirs and you're not feeling content about where you are in life. Unfollow those people. So there's a way to use the technology to help you.
That's a great point, because if I'm scrolling through Instagram, I don't need to see this, but my mind is constantly just itching for it for no particular reason.
Yeah.
And you're so right. You got to go through, you got to filter, and you have to find the things that deep down without wanting to admit it are going to help you.
Yeah, because even, you're getting all that subconsciously.
Exactly.
And that's getting into your brain, and it's,
it's almost like a spring cleaning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once a couple times a year,
Absolutely.
go through there.
Because people don't think that what you think about is how you behave. And I'm always telling whatever you're seeing, right, whatever you're scrolling through, that's getting in your brain, and there's developing those thoughts or bringing out old fears, old things from your past. All those triggers are coming up. And then how you think determines how you feel, which determines how you act. So if I start comparing my life to someone else, I start to feel like I don't have a good life, and my life is, in comparison, is terrible. And I start to act like someone who's miserable and who's unhappy and who feels like their life isn't important. And so I may isolate, pull myself away. I may not want to do a good job at work. And so a lot of people don't make that connection. What you think determines how you behave. And so if you're filtering, and not even just that, if you're having conversations, meaningful conversations, and they're adding value to your life, of course, your behaviors are going to show that you're more confident and secure in what you're doing. So having conversations like this, where we all been through it. It's great, so you kind of sit up straight and you're all right, me too.
Yeah, and then, you can reset, instead of defaulting back to some of the things that you do right. You got to stand tall with your shoulders back.
Rule number one.
Rule number one. So, yeah, you're right. It's as you hear these conversations, you start to realize oh, that's right. All right. So it's be positive, right?
Yeah.
Take chances, pursue passions. It's do all these things and you're going to have success. Believe in yourself. Yes, you're going to have bad days. Yes, you're going to have to deal with some struggles, but here's how we get past them.
And don't be afraid to make mistakes.
No, it's funny. It's
that's the hardest thing is getting over that for a lot of people, I think.
Which is the best lesson in life is the mistake. It's people are so afraid to make a mistake. It's wake up, people. That's the best thing you can do is make a mistake. You don't learn anything from what you do right. You don't learn anything from winning. You learn from the failures. It's and then you may not learn, right? But you should be learning from your failures. And then you got to just get up and then keep pursuing it.
Well, you have to be humble when you fail. I think that's the thing, because people can fail and be like, I deserved to win that, and then be mad about it and
make excuses and instead take responsibility. I need to be better. Maybe I wasn't lucky, but if I was, working harder, I wouldn't need luck. But you're right. It's we have to be honest with ourselves. I think that's a struggle too sometimes, is not taking perspective and analyzing what you're doing sometimes and making excuses for it, almost lying to yourself. It's I know I'm doing it. It's I'm not losing weight. Why? It's there's 17 reasons I could tell you, but at the end of the day, I know why. It's I'm making excuses. I can do it. I have to do it, but I'm not going to quit. We keep talking about it. I think at some point on this podcast, I hope I'll be a skinny version of myself, and I could be I did it. And then probably get fat 2 months later, but so what? I'm going to do it.
At least you did it.
Yeah.
Yo-yo.
You learned from it.
But I love that, because it's not only just making the mistakes, but also being honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Sometimes sometimes I always say, we get in the way of our own, future, It's you stopping yourself, right? You know what to do. You know what you need. You know what you shouldn't be doing. And if you could be honest and more real with yourself about what it is that you need, you'll get it a lot faster.
I know, but it's hard to do that.
Yes, of course.
So that the problem is so I tell my kids don't lie, try not to lie. That's the biggest thing for me. It's don't lie. Okay. And the reason is not because once you start lying, it gets easier. You start lying to yourself. And then eventually, if you go too far, you've lost all perspective, right?
Yeah. And believe your own lies.
Yeah. Yes. And there's nothing worse than that, because it's I guess you can hit the reset button, but there's no there's no the real perspective. It's hard enough to self-analyze. Never mind when you're being and it's why? It's because it's hard. It's hard to look at yourself and be honest. And it's why am I where I am? Like, all right, well, I'm here because of this reason. But when you're not doing so well, when you're depressed, like some of the reasons you don't want to face, like, well, because I'm probably drinking a little too much. I got to stop doing that because I'm not watching. I'm not taking care of myself. I'm not sleeping. And like, there's worse stuff. But, if you're not being honest with yourself, like it's hard,
Because then you don't know where to draw the line. Like there's the lies you tell yourself, and then there's the lies that outside people or society or culture will tell you. And so I love that where you're telling your kids, like, don't lie, because it also defines who they are. It's like who I want to be, who I don't want to be, and it also confirms their values. Like this is who I am, so that when the outside world tries to tell them or try to shape them, they can say like, no, like,
yeah,
I don't believe in that. I don't accept that,
No, it makes them a strong person because it's hard to live up to a certain code and have some integrity. I try to live up to a certain code and I fail miserably short a lot, but I'm always trying to live up to a standard and I hope myself, I do it through faith. I have a standard, right? And what I think is the appropriate, ideal, and then I'm never going to be there, but I'm always striving to be there.
But I think that's all of us, right? And I think we don't say it enough, is that no one is perfect. If you live long enough, you're going to make plenty of mistakes. And that's life. It's supposed to be that way. And I think a lot of people have these unrealistic expectations that life is supposed to be perfect and it's supposed to become easy. And no, I mean, I'm sure if we had all the time to talk about our lives, how many battle wounds would we have, about just the things we've been through.
And that's why the show is the good life, not the happy life. Because it's like, you can have a happy life all the time because it's like, you're going to have tragedies. You're going to have, you're going to have failures. You're going to have stuff that happens and you got to get through them. And, but tomorrow is always another day. People lose sight of tomorrow. I think very often it's like tomorrow's hope, it's like you may be struggling, but you have tomorrow. It's like, it could get worse, but it could also get better. So, do what you can, stay in the fight and get up. Don't give up. That's my biggest fear as a parent, is having a kid struggling with anything. You don't want to see your kid struggle with anything. And it's like, as a parent, you want to figure out how to help them when they are. And it's like, you got to kind of give them the tools to try to figure it out themselves, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know.
How hard is it to get, we were just talking about, being truthful with yourself. When you see patients, how hard is it to actually get down to the deep-rooted problem and, get them to actually come out with the truth? Obviously, they walk in the door or they get on a screen face-to-face, something's wrong. They're there for a reason.
Right.
But actually getting to the problem, how much of a struggle is that, and how quickly can that even happen?
I mean, it all depends on the person. And I think the relationship that's built, like the rapport, because in that first, I've had clients kind of spill their heart out day one,
Yeah.
They were just itching to.
Yeah, like they've been waiting and they're like, I'm ready, and here's everything I have. And then I have clients who, I started figuring things out about them like years later. Like seeing clients for I remember seeing this woman for years, and in the third year, she told me she was dating somebody for 12 years. And I'm like, you don't think we would have talked about that?
It's probably an important factor that I should have known.
All this stress, and it's from a relationship that we didn't talk about for the first 3 years. And I'm just using that as a small example. But sometimes, depending on how much someone has gone through in their life and how little they trust people, I have to earn that trust. I have to show them that, they can trust me with some of those deeper, painful experiences, and that I can handle it and I can be there with them. So I think it definitely depends on the person.
How often can you sniff out someone that isn't giving you all the info that you probably should?
Quickly.
Are you trying to solve their problem or help them solve their own problems too?
It's what, sometimes I try not to come in with an agenda, people hold back for a reason. And I try to respect that there's a reason that they're not yet ready to talk about it, and I'm there, and I always remind people therapy can only go as far as you allow it to. So if the more honest you can be with me, the more honest I can be with you. Because if you know, if they hold back and they're expecting honest advice from me, well, I'm limited, you know, because you're not giving me everything to work with, you know, so.
That's interesting. I listen to Dr. Laura a lot on satellite radio when I'm commuting,
Yeah.
and she's given hard-ass, feedback and information to the people calling, but she's literally only listening to them for like 15, 20 seconds, so she's got to go with what they give her.
Yeah.
And sometimes it sounds harsh, but the more and more you listen, it's like, she's right. She's giving, honest professional opinion on the information that she has.
Right, and sometimes it's very limited.
Yeah.
So you're really.
Yeah.
She also says, which made a lot of sense the first time I heard it, was not everything can be fixed.
Yeah.
Which, sounds kind of harsh in a way, but people have to almost realize that because, let's say a patient is trying to be helped. In Dr. Laura's case, millions of people are listening. So you're helping all the people that are listening, not just the one person calling in.
Right.
And that's what's great about this. Hopefully people
Yeah,
are listening.
Yeah.
absolutely. No, but you're making great points because sometimes it's the tip of the iceberg that I get. And I know there's more. I can feel it. I can see it. There's more information there. But I can only work with what they're willing to show me, and you do the best that you can with what they give. And I think when a relationship is built and walls come down, then you start to, hear
Right.
more. But you can't fake it that long. See, people think it's easy to just wear a mask. I mean, you get to know someone and you see the pain that they're going through, or you see that they're struggling with something, and they can try to hold it as long as they can and keep it together, but let that relationship, build.
It eventually comes out.
It eventually comes
Yeah,
out.
I think it's kind of the appeal I think that we have or will have is that people can see the authenticity of someone. So it's like, I think a lot of people think they're, listen, there's only
Can't fake
a
that.
select group of elite actors in Hollywood, right? It's like most people are not good actors. Like, I'm what you see is what you get with me most of the time, I think. So, but it's funny. It's like, yeah, people will try to hide things or portray things, and it's like, it's not working. But I'm sure from your when you're sitting in your chair, you're probably like, well, I got to let them find their own way out of this, or be patient enough to let them open up to you. Yeah, there must be. I imagine there's a lot of trust that needs to be established. I feel like even here, we don't have a lot of time with each other. We're, it's not like we're having conversations over. Well, I hope to have conversations with you over and over again, but even here, there's got to be that rapport and that trust, at least on a basic level, so that there's a good conversation that happens. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the blue lights, but it's like people sit down here and it's like all of a sudden, like, all right, like I want to talk about stuff. It's like, maybe it's the microphones. I don't know.
Well, no, it's the energy you guys provide.
Is it? Oh, well, maybe it's awesome. That's awesome. It's
Very
like
authentic.
it's
Good.
like
Yeah.
therapeutic, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's real. Like you said, it's real. Like we talk about this, and we talked about it. It's like we were talking because my co-host was 15 minutes late. No, let's not.
As usual.
We were having a conversation before, and Justin out there in the audience, who we all love, and one day you'll meet, we were telling him, like, I feel like the 15 minutes we talked about, like, was this filming? Like, no, it wasn't filming. And it's like, it was just awesome. And it's like, you're in this environment, you're opening up, you're getting ready for it. And then the lights come up sometimes, and it's like, it gets harder to have the conversation. But in the end, you find a groove and you start just having a normal conversation, and you feel like you're being filmed, and you start getting into conversations that I know are worthwhile for us and for people listening.
Well, it's always therapeutic, to be able to sit with someone and just speak about like experience in life. Like it's the easiest way to open up. You sit at a table, you talk about your life and your experience, and it's the same thing in like therapy. So you guys are doing therapy here. You know?
You don't know where it's going to go. It goes directions you don't have any idea. I mean, how much of what you do is scripted with clients?
None of
None?
it's scripted. I mean, it can't be, because every client is so different, and they're coming to you with different problems. And so you can feel if someone's inauthentic. You can feel that in a conversation. I mean, as a therapist, like, we can sense it from each other. So no, there is no scripting. A lot of it is active listening, right? It's learning how to be a good listener, learning how to be empathetic and compassionate. And that's all people want. People just want to be heard. They want to be able to share their experience, share where they're coming from, and feel that they're respected and they're heard, And so you can't fake that. You either
Oh,
have it
yeah.
or you don't. You know, you can't
True.
learn that in school, you know?
No, I think you're right. I think people want to have a voice, and they want to be appreciated and listened to, and feel like they're a part of, this, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's the same thing that compels us to be here talking with one another, right? And it just,
I love to talk.
Yeah.
Even when I feel like not talking to anyone, I still deep down,
Yeah.
you always want to talk to someone. Yeah.
I don't think that there's any way to make yourself happier in life than being in relationships.
Right.
We're
believe that
social,
too.
and I think, as you touched upon before, the pandemic shifted a lot of stuff because I don't think we still know like the detriment. I don't think we know the scope of what it did. Like even for our kids, like my kids were, remote learning for a long time, and they weren't socializing. I mean, or especially early adolescence. I mean, half of the reason they're going to school is to socialize. So
You're right. I had little ones, like 8 years old, coming in for anxiety. Like little kids saying, I have anxiety. And I didn't see that. Like you didn't have kids knowing that terminology. But a lot of children came in because they couldn't handle what was happening to them. Their whole life was going to school, having structure, and now they had to be home and homeschool. And parents aren't teachers, parents were doing the best that they could while working, and it scared them. And so you're right. It was really hard for children who had no control.
What are some things that you say or to an 8-year-old or with an 8-year-old and a parent at the same time to help them? What are some easy steps maybe some listeners can take away from it, being parents with kids that maybe be in the same situation?
Through the pandemic, you mean like going through that?
Yeah, or in general, just, even before the pandemic, social media, all the anxiety it gave kids and thinking they're not good enough and, all the lies they see.
You know what it really comes down to is so in therapy, yes, we work with the family, but mostly with children you work one-on-one, so they build like a relationship with you. And it's teaching kids about who they are, feeling confident in who they are, even understanding their own emotions, because kids feel really big emotions and they don't have the name for it, but they feel it. And sometimes adults, we can overlook that because we're so used to labeling things. And kids sometimes feel things and they don't have a label for it, so they react, and we don't understand where that reaction is coming from. So I usually try to help children learn more vocabulary to be able to identify, I feel this, and then help them understand where it comes from. Because think about how much more freeing it is to know that this is really happening to me and you're listening to me. And not only do you believe that this is happening to me, now I know what it's called and I know what it means. And then you teach the skills, like the coping strategies, because a lot of, with children, therapy's so fun, it's so awesome. But I think a lot of parents don't talk about these conversations because they think the kids are too young to understand. They're not. They have too much access to so much information that if you're not teaching them, someone else is teaching them. So I
Very
try to
true.
really help the parents communicate better. Like when you said in the beginning, it's all about communication. Sometimes parents don't have the time, or they don't think it's a big deal, to talk about those kind of things. So giving them the words to express themselves. And look, we all went through it and we all came out of this pandemic experiencing different things. And it was really hard. But I think having a real conversation that their feelings matter and, it sounds like you're scared, using words that they can relate. It totally helps.
That's a great point. You never really think of that as something as easy as that, teaching them what you learn in school.
Yeah, my oldest is 8, and it was it's just interesting you say that because it's funny how we react to certain things. It's like I was scared in the beginning, and everybody was different, right? Everybody had a point of view, right, from one side to the opposite side, and I saw my oldest struggle a little because he tends to be anxious, which is kind of hereditary because I have, mild anxiety, I think, my dad. And to what I thought was helpful with that was not caring, but making light of it. Don't worry, you're healthy, you're this. No, this is not a big deal. Yeah. Or my wife was more concerned. We got to do this. You got to be careful. And I was kind of going the opposite way because I was trying to make it seem like, honey, you don't because I mean, as a kid, I can't even imagine. I mean, I was scared as an adult in the beginning,
Yeah.
and to be a kid and going through this and seeing what you're seeing, it's like but you're right. What I did find helpful is just talk them through it.
Yeah.
You know, it's normal for you to feel this way. Everything's going to be all right. Like as a parent, like everyone else, we want to be reassured, you know, like even when you're going through the worst thing in the world, like depression or losing a loved one, like
loss.
yeah, it's not, there's no getting around that. It's going to be excruciating. Like it's like, let's not pretend it's anything other than the worst thing in the world to lose a parent, a child, or whatever, a close friend. But it's like life goes on. They want you to live your best life. They don't want you thinking about. It's like even the people that love you don't. So you talk through all this. Like it's natural to feel the way you're feeling, to be scared. But you know, so I do think that, you know, someone hearing that is going to be like, oh, okay. You know, that's why these conversations are important to listen to or to be listened to, is because all of a sudden the light bulb goes off. Yeah. Like, oh, I thought maybe it wasn't a good idea. It's amazing to me and what I do for a living, and I'm sure you probably see it more so. But what I do for a living in real estate and transactional work, and some of the questions I get, I'm like, why are you asking this question? Like sometimes I can't even fathom that someone would ask a question like, but there's a lot of people out there in buying a house or raising kids or coping with depression or working out or that have no idea about certain things because they never were educated about it. They just don't know. And it's like having these conversations open their minds up to certain things. And then what are we doing? Then we're now helping them be better people, parents, happier, you know, being able to cope with problems. So. And
how much better does it feel to hear other people go through the same shared experience? Yeah. You know, like acknowledging that to your son who is
Max,
to Max, that like this is a normal feeling. It's a scary time, and it's okay to feel scared. You know, like we don't have to kind of stuff it down and hide it, and you know, it's a very real feeling.
Yeah.
And I think that gives validation. You know, and validation is so important with kids, to know that how I'm feeling is real and it's okay. You're going to get through it, even though it's hard.
Right.
You know.
And as a guy, sometimes as a guy,
how
right?
Hard is
no, as a guy, you can say
touched on it early on. Yeah,
no, but guys are different. Like, because as a father, sometimes I feel like you have the, you know, what is it, the devil on the side and the angel. So the devil's like, tell your son to like be quiet, like, be a man, and stop complaining, and then, honey, you know, I'm sensitive to how you're feeling. I mean, as a, you know, and as a human being, you're always, I'm trying to learn, and I'm exposing myself to a lot of information, and I have the ability to, you know, get this information in a lot of different ways. Some people don't have access to that information or don't have the time to do studying. So it's like these conversations allow people to have tools and all right, well, maybe that's what I want to do. Maybe not. At the end of the day, everyone, whether you're a parent, you're going to, like the mistake, I'm going to make mistakes with raising my kids. All right. I love my kids. I'm going to do what I think's best for them, but good intentions mean nothing. Plenty of parents with good intentions spoil their kids, create monsters out of their kids. Right. But I have to live with the decisions I make, and anyone else out there who's listening and hearing the conversations we have are given tools, giving different perspectives and different ways people are successful or different ways that they failed. And you're going to use that to your benefit or your detriment. But at the end of the day, you got to live with what you do.
Right.
So I think this is important for people to have like options, right?
Yeah.
You know,
and I want to go back to something you said about men, like men telling boys like, man up. I mean, it's, I don't know where it comes from, but I know many men feel that way. They were raised like, just tough it out. But men have emotions, and pretty strong emotions, you know, like there's no separation from that. We all experience it. And I find men can be even more emotional, because anger is still an emotion. Just because you're not crying doesn't mean that, you know, and you're angry doesn't mean you're tougher than someone who's crying. Like, having extreme anger is a really strong emotion.
I mean, I'm the only one in my family that cries during sad movies. My wife doesn't, so I'm not certainly pretending to be not emotional. But you're right. It's like I don't know where it comes from. It's like I don't know if it's an historical mindset here in this culture. If it's I'm Portuguese, if it's a Portuguese thing. I mean, I don't know what it is, but yeah, it's like
I'm Hispanic, and it's the same way. Like men are raised to not be emotional or as vulnerable, and which blows my mind because they're children. Children grow up and they have so many big emotions, even bigger than adults. Yeah,
express yourself, make sense of it all. It's like and again, nothing's better than communication because what you're telling them is just basically be quiet. Like, wait, no, it's like, all right, I shouldn't cry because like I lost a crayon, right? But I'm sick and I don't feel good. Like, I get you're crying. I mean, because when I'm sick and not feeling good, I'm crying, but that's okay because it's me. I can do that, right? Because then we're hypocrites, right? Because if my son's sick and nauseous in the car and I'm mad at him, like, oh my God, you threw up. But yet if I'm the one that's sick, I want everyone feeling sorry for me. It's like, come on,
that's a guy
Steve.
thing, right?
Yeah, it's like, I mean, and then you look back and you're like, I'm a moron. I'm a total idiot. I'm a horrible father in person. Like, because it's like, here I am, I'm getting mad at my kid for getting sick. And it's like, but if I was sick, God forbid, everybody better empathize and feel sorry for dad because, I'm having a tough day, but no one else can. It's like, we have to humble ourselves.
Let me ask you, do you guys feel like using this platform, it's forcing you to be more emotional, like to share more about how you feel and experience things?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely forcing it.
It's humbling. I mean, it is because it's like you're sitting here in front, and your opinion and what your voice is being spread, and like people are gonna judge it and people are gonna comment about it. So you're careful with what you say, but you're also it's also liberating. But you're exposing yourself, like so
you guys are.
I think in being authentic, you automatically, I think you default to do that. I think as human beings, like we are, you're being yourself. You can't that's the one thing about podcasts that people have said, and that in 10 episodes, I can say that that's absolutely true. It's like, it's not scripted. After a while, like it is what it is. Like what you think, how you feel, like it's going to come through to the audience, to the guest. Yeah. Like you can't put on a facade for an hour. It's like, so yeah, I think for sure I'm opening up. I'm being more emotional, and I'm definitely giving a side of me that I would say under normal circumstances, I probably wouldn't be like divulging. Right. And I think more and more every time.
I've always felt, well, not always, I would say more recently, let's say over the past 5 to 10 years, that I have something to share with people. Like I've always felt like I've been able to help people, whether it's put a smile on their face or, help them physically being a trainer, or in the medical field, help them because they're injured. And that's been a motivating factor for me. Like I hope people are listening and can take something out of it and help them in any way. So that's been on my mind since we've started this. Like that's the driving factor, and hope I'm doing a good job.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I think half the reason we're here is because I felt like, and then thinking about pursuing this. Obviously, you go through what's your why, right? What's your reason why? Yeah. And like I think ultimately it's like I think there's a void out there for everyday people to have. Maybe a platform for us, like for you to like you do it every day with your clients, and you may one day pursue an avenue similar to this, so that you can expand your reach and and help people, because we have like teachers' hearts. We want to help people, so we're in it for the right reasons. But when you're out here talking and you're reaching out to people, it's an unbelievable like opportunity to help, and I think. When we were really thinking about what we're doing is we're trying to reach as many people as we can, and to reach an audience that I think doesn't have a voice and doesn't have a lot of people to listen to. Like I said, everyday people. You have plenty of rich and famous and extremely successful people out there doing podcasts, and they're awesome to listen to and learn from. But I always say like they're in a different stratosphere. It's like here we are. Probably more in the everyday person realm. So it's like, all right, what are people like us going through? Because our shared experience is more prevalent than like Elon or Joe Rogan or like how are they like us? Like in a sense they're a lot like us, but for the most part they're not really going through what we're going through, like having to worry about bills and everyday stuff that we have to deal with. So I think that we have an opportunity to really touch a lot of people that are in our shoes, really.
I think it's the same for like my field. We get to choose who we want to work with, and choose in what city and what demographic. And like I'm drawn to the community work. Like I work out of Waterbury, and it's a really underserved community, but I love that work. Like I love talking to people who don't feel like they're heard or don't feel like they have a chance to do anything, like pursue their dreams and and do anything and change their outcomes. And I love being in it, because that humbles me, that grounds me. And I think it allows me to give people a different side of what therapy could be like, and also give them more hope, So I know you guys, we were talking about me being a therapist, but I focus on trauma and addiction. That's like my specialty. And I work with a lot of people who've been incarcerated and who are transitioning out back into the world. So like the work, there's so much work to do, and to help people feel more confident about themselves. So when you were saying that, like I understood that, because like that's my why. Like, that's what drives me every single morning. I've been doing this for 13 years and I love it. Like every day I wake up just feeling so grateful for the opportunity to help change people's lives. And you can't work or do this if you're not passionate about it. It's just impossible to keep it going, because you would, anyone can make money, but would you be happy, doing something that you absolutely are not passionate about? No, it'd be terrible.
No, there's plenty of people pursuing, money and unhappy doing it, and they're worse off for it.
Yeah.
I love my drive here. I get excited every Thursday when I know we're going to come, talk to someone or just go on and have conversations. I'm pursuing and it's funny. It's like you go through, you make decisions in your life, and then it's hard. We talked about this briefly beforehand too. It's like hard. It's a hard mindset, and I'm not sure why, for you to pursue your path. You almost feel guilty about doing it. It's like, no, you have to do something you don't like, and that's work. Like, wait,
right.
Why can't you work at something you like to do? It's like I had to wait to get to a position in life and to get to a state where I felt comfortable enough to have the courage to do it. And I wish more people would just go for it right from the beginning, because my father-in-law, who does something he loves, says, I've never worked a day in my life. Like, I love what I do. And I've never got that until I started doing this. Like, I love what I wouldn't say I love what I like what I do. Like, I do like, my career, but I love doing this. I've always liked having conversations, having contact with people and being social. I mean, and then at the same time being able to maybe transform someone's life. It's like that. What's better than that?
I did not like the life I had before I became a therapist. And sometimes, like, I know we were talking earlier that, sometimes you have to do a lot of jobs that you don't want to do. On the road to self-discovery, sometimes, I had to work, I had to pay bills, so I had to do jobs that I was successful in, but they weren't making me happy. But on that road, that's when I started to find what I didn't want to do, right? So right. I'm like, I don't like to do this job. I don't want to, sit behind a computer the whole day, because that's not who I am. And slowly ruling out all the things I didn't want to do, I started to get closer and closer that I wanted to help people. Like, I wanted people to figure out what I took so long to figure out, and I wanted to help free people the same way I freed myself. So slowly I started realizing, I wanted to pursue a career in therapy. I wanted to be a therapist, but not everyone gets a chance to just pursue what they want to pursue. They don't always know what they want to, go after. But I think that work ethic of just being disciplined, showing up, working, even if you have to juggle a few jobs. And I think the greatest lesson I've learned is figuring out what I don't want to do to get to where I want to go. Where I wanted to get to.
That's a great point, because a lot of people don't know what they want to do, but they're not out there trying.
Right.
You're, as we talked earlier about making mistakes, you learn from the mistakes. So if you're going to do something and you hate it and just keep doing it, you're not learning because that's kind of like considered a mistake.
Yeah.
You're doing something you don't like, and you're just miserable all day.
I've always envied people that like knew what they wanted to do since they were kids. Like, I hate you. Like,
Isn't that weird to listen to people who say that? Because
I always knew I wanted to be an astronaut. I always knew. It's like, for years, I didn't know what I probably still struggle until you realize what you don't want to do. And then you realize, what am I good at? What do I enjoy doing? And then you kind of fall into like, all right, well, this is something I could definitely.
I feel like maybe they just got lucky and they were one of those who picked right off the bat.
I just because now that I've heard what you do, I mean, obviously, as some of my background and dealing with incarcerated people myself and addiction and all that. What do you find as a reoccurring theme with people that are struggling with addiction? Is there anything to like that we can help people avoid doing, or how do they? And this is like a multi-layered question, right? It's like,
how can therapy be for the listeners?
But it's like what is like a reoccurring theme? It's like why do you think people get trapped in addiction? I mean, I guess some of that is kind of obvious, right? But is there anything that you see that's like?
Well, first of all, is it hereditary? Is it in people's DNA? Whether or not someone's going to be an addict or not.
Well, that's a loaded question. So let me try.
The scientific level.
It's like, give me stats. What I've seen, okay. So you guys gave me great questions. So I'm going to try to answer as much as possible. There are people who have a history of drug abuse and alcohol in their family, right? And I think you're more susceptible to falling into addiction because you were raised in it. Usually you go after what's familiar to you, right?
So they're seeing it growing up.
You're seeing it, you're in the culture, it's normal, normalized, not normal outside, but like maybe normalized at home. So I find that you have to protect yourself, because it's a lot easier for you to fall into addiction because you go back to what you're familiar with, Is there some biological, thing happening? Yeah, I mean, depending on so many scenarios. Was your mom abusing drugs and alcohol while she was pregnant with you? Were you inhaling things as an infant? I mean, there's so many stories, of different reasons why people fell into addiction. But I think just if you were raised in it and it's normal to you, it's a lot easier to fall into it. Just like abuse, if it's normalized at home, it's so easy to end up with an abusive partner, so kind of similar.
Yeah, I guess the other, no, you answered his question. You answered basically my first question.
Maybe a better way to put it is people who are struggling with that, what's a good way to help them recognize it and move forward trying to almost cure it? You answered the question why people grow up and can become addicted to things or go through negative things like that. But
what are some of the successes you've seen that people getting out of addiction? It's probably
That's all. Yeah. Let me say how. Let me answer a question that you didn't really ask, but I'm gonna start it off.
No, that's perfect.
Working in a community, I've seen so many things. Like, you have people who live in an environment that promotes drugs and alcohol, and so like you're trying to, become sober, but yet your housing situation is filled with people who are constantly abusing, so people fall right back into it.
Yeah.
If it's in the family, right, you go back to what's normal to you. And so in the community that I work in, there's not a lot of resources for people, We sometimes take for granted, like if you're English speaking, there's a lot of resources you can go to. But if you're in Waterbury is predominantly Spanish speaking, there's not a lot of bilingual services. So sometimes people are stuck in the addiction just because they can't get the right therapist or support in the language that they speak.
They literally can't get the help.
Like if I have clients who are monolingual, I have to send them to Bridgeport, or they're on a waiting list because that's the only intensive program available in Spanish, And so I have someone waiting to get help. So in that period of waiting, they can overdose, they can die, And so there's so many barriers as to why people maybe don't get initial help right away. Sometimes they've burned bridges with family, and they don't have the support anymore. One too many times messing up, and now they're kind of on their own. The homelessness is a problem, and housing. If you're on the streets and you're living in poverty, you know, do you want to accept that reality, or would you rather just drown it, you know, in alcohol or drugs? You know, a lot of people who've used drugs and alcohol or have abused it have put themselves in really compromising situations. So now they have trauma on top of that, you know, so they use to not have to think about the trauma that they experience. So it is so complex, all the different reasons.
We're looking for simple answers to impossibly complex situations.
Yeah,
it's like,
and so, you know, I think that I just try to start with wherever people are at and what they're ready for. Yeah. You know, and if someone is coming in to see me and they're actively using drugs, which I have plenty of clients who do, the fact that they're willing to just come and have a conversation about it is a huge step. And I try to just encourage, give support as I go. Like, some people are ready to say, hey, I'm abusing, but I'm not ready for treatment. And I'm like, okay, like, we'll work with where you're at. You know, because of course we would want them to be abstinent from like all drugs, you know, like don't use anything, be totally sober, but that's not everyone's reality, because they still have to go home to maybe some of those same conditions. So it's just about encouraging and meeting people where they're at.
Yeah, and I think it's important for people to know. I mean, not that they don't know that, but to be reminded of the abyss and the misery that people can find themselves in for a variety of reasons, which just I think should reiterate, or really should, you know, vibrate in people's brains. It's like, you know, be very careful what you're doing. Try your best to stay away from situations that can get you in trouble. You know. And shows without, you know, it's ironic that we're on a podcast talking about the good life, right? And then we're talking about this other side of life that can be like, you know, sad and horrible. And it's like, you got to keep these things in perspective. It's like we all come from a variety of different backgrounds. Yeah. We all have a tremendous amount of hurdles. Some of us less than others. Some of us are, I mean, I was lucky to be born into parents that you know, had good jobs and taught me, you know, and led me in the right direction. And I'm very thankful for that. But I've seen other people born in my situation and have gone downhill. And I've seen people born in worse situations than me go uphill. Yeah. So I think people need to know, like, listen, life is unbelievably awesome, right? It can bring you so many great things, but it also can bring you a lot of sad and disastrous things. So, you know, you got to do your best to navigate and put yourself in, no matter where you are, in positions to start to go uphill. And that's very hard to do, especially if you're dealing with addiction, depression, all these things. It's like, but there's hope, you know, there's definitely hope, and there's help. There's people like you to talk to get into a better spot. And listen to the stories of people that have done it, right? Yeah. Because you can get caught up and think about this, and me think about it a little. I was starting to be like, feel sad, and I should, but humble yourself, do your best, try to do the best you can, try to get help, do whatever you can to try to make a better life for yourself. I think that's the moral of the story. It's like, don't be naive to how bad things can go, but don't lose hope or sight of how great things can go, and how you can get balance, and how you can slowly but surely, like, get out of the abyss and strive for the light, right?
I'm constantly trying to encourage people to just be responsible with their lives. Like, it's your life, right? And things may have not worked out the way you wanted to. You may not have had control over it growing up, but you do have control now, and you get to choose how you want to live it. And there are plenty of small things. We're always talking about gratefulness, like small ways to be grateful day to day, which will cultivate big feelings of gratefulness later on.
Like a day of sobriety.
Yeah,
you know?
Like an hour of it. I mean, or coming to a group and talking to people who also get it. Like, there's so many small moments that we take for granted, and not just in addiction, but I think in general, you know? And I'm constantly just teaching, like, this is your life. You get to be responsible. You get to choose to be responsible with it. And so you choose what you want to listen to. You choose what you want to hear. You choose who you surround yourself with. Those are all choices you get to make. And little by little, making better choices, choosing better friends, choosing better podcasts to listen to, you know.
Hopefully ours.
It'll slowly lead you to a better quality of life. Because, you know, a lot of people have listened to lies their whole life and don't believe anything, and, you know, they don't believe in themselves anymore. So little pockets of peace, little pockets of gratefulness. You know,
They don't. Some people don't think they deserve a better life, which is the real sad thing.
It's so sad, and I hope that, you know, I really hope that this podcast is a blessing for so many people, because a good life is accessible to anyone who wants it. It's not just for someone who's rich, not for someone who's poor. Doesn't matter where you come from. You get to have a good life. Like, you are worthy of having a good life, you know, but you do have to take control over it. And it's something that maybe some people have to work at on a daily basis. And maybe some people, you know, it rolls off their shoulder and they can be happier, you know, more days out of the week. But I think that we all have a right and have access to it if we want it.
I completely agree with that. I think we're the painters of a canvas that we can create. Yeah. I do think we can speak things into existence and make our realities better. I think we have to believe in ourselves, and I think that these conversations and seeing this kind of content can give people hope that, you know, it's out there for us. It's like, because I do think that too many people, for whatever reason, and I'm not sure why it is, have too much self-doubt and don't think that they can achieve things that they can. And it may not, it comes easier for others. It may come after one failure or 100.
Yeah.
But, you know, don't give up on living the life that you deserve, which is a life of pursuing things that you like, finding positive, good relationships. I mean, like you said, there's just so much out there that can bring joy to your life, right? Yeah. And it's not, and as I grow older, I start to realize that the real things that bring joy to your life are accessible to everyone. You know, healthy relationships, you know, breathing clean air, going for walks, running. Yeah. I mean, the people with money that think money is going to create happiness are, I don't think, often surprised by the fact that it doesn't really bring you happiness. It may when you buy a new car. Everybody's bought something, a new iPhone, a new car. It brings you happiness for 3 seconds, right? And then at the end of the day, it's like, it's here, I own it, big deal. The things that sustain you are the relationships, struggling and achieving and being happy with the things that you've accomplished. And that usually comes from tears and toil, not things that are handed to you. So
absolutely.
I think generally in this podcast, what people are going to find is inspiration and hope in the conversations we have. And I think today they found it. And it was great today to have, you know, hope as a theme, and then how some people don't have it well, and the good life is not there for everyone, but it is there for everyone to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely.
Patience is key.
Right.
I've always said that, you know, celebrate every little win. We talked about being perfect, and it's unachievable, but if you can always, you know, you're not going to be perfect, but if you can overcome and be 51 instead of 49, you're ahead of the game, you know? So that's important to remember.
Well, listen, I think we could probably go on to about 100 different topics and talk all night long. And I do hope that at some point you have us on again. And one day when you have your own podcast, maybe you'll have us on as guests.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time. I think that tremendous value in this video. You've opened my eyes up to a bunch of stuff. And I think I'm very grateful that you came on and spoke with us. And again, I hope we do it again soon.
Oh, thank you guys.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Bye, everybody.
Sayonara.